very good evening to you. I'm Ryan Broom. Our top story tonight comes from the estimates debate. We're just before it entered the committee stage where the various heads are examined item by item. Finance Minister Chris Sinclair contended that the ruling Democratic Labour Party has put forward ideas to see the country go forward with the release of the Barbados Sustainable Recovery Plan. He says, on the other hand, the opposition has nothing to show.
You have one plan, a plan here, endorsed by the social partners, speaking to the future of Barbados, endorsed by the social partners, all three of them, ready for implementation. And the member for St. Peter, Right Honourable for St. Peter, in his farewell speech, I believe he said it was his farewell speech, spoke eloquently about why he feels that this plan is the plan. But he didn't only say that, he said that it is the only plan that is available because the opposition has not brought any plan, has no plan, and therefore is seeking a mandate on no plan.
The Finance Minister also noted the opposition leader Mia Mottley's absence from what he said was a very most important part of the debate. He said it was not becoming of someone aspiring to be a Prime Minister.
But at least she could have stayed to hear her junior members, most of whom were out to sea and lost, shocked even that the leader of the opposition ran out of Parliament. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, sir, it was as if when she brought them in the huddle like a basketball team after my speech, she was hoping, I suspect, that when she sat down after 25 minutes and said she was not participating in the quote-unquote charade of the estimates, that they would have followed her out, but nobody left behind her. She left on her own.
Now, earlier, Minister of Transport and Works, Michael Lashley, indicated that government's road program has started. He says contracts now have to be prepared.
To take something, and with the rains that we had, sir, and coming on into December, contracting firms normally take certainly sometimes a whole month off to get back up to work into January, and so those roads have started.
Mr. Lashley also states that consideration is also being given to constructing roads using other road building material.
We carry out, we look at the construction of concrete roads in some parts of St. Lucie, of course in some other areas in St. Michael, because we believe that we should look at all other options, not only asphalt, look at all other aspects of road construction. Certainly, Mr. Speaker, sir, our legislative program, we've passed the Road Traffic Act. Certainly there will have to be a robust PR campaign in relation to the Road Traffic Act.
Despite the challenges of not having enough trucks, the Sanitation Service Authority is still meeting its commitment to keeping the island clean. This from Environment Minister Dr. Dennis Lowe, whose comments come against the background of the sewage problems on the south coast. Dr. Lowe says he's traveled with the SSA teams which are responsible for late-night cleanups along the badly affected Hastings stretch.
Here on site, led by the engineer of the Sanitation Service Authority, a very competent officer, and some workers who were running the truck, both the washdown truck and the sweeper. The reason why we employed the sweeper was to avoid what the honorable member who just took her seat said. Animals and cats and dogs trapping remains onto the person and going into their homes and so on and so forth.
The Barbados Sustainable Recovery Plan is old news. St. Michael Southeast Representative Sandia Bradshaw says there is nothing in the document that the Democratic Labour Party has not said before.
The difficulty from day one has been lack of implementation, and 10 years later it continues to be a lack of implementation. Madam Deputy Speaker, if you doubt me, I want to make the point that there was an infrastructure committee set up by the Democratic Labour Party, a committee which this administration indicated to this country was going to be responsible for all of the projects that were coming through. All of the listed projects from must be Pickering to Hyatt. But regardless of the project that has been listed and identified, a handful of those projects have actually come to fruition.
Opposition St. Michael North MP Ronald Toppin believes the South Coast sewage crisis represents enough reason for an environmental impact assessment to be carried out in relation to the planned Hyatt Hotel project. He says the impact on existing sewage systems in the city should be considered.
I would trust that having had now the situation where sewage is rampant on the South Coast, and since we now starting to filter down here in the Bridgetown area, that the Prime Minister will recognize now, even if he didn't recognize before, the need for an environmental impact assessment in relation to the construction of the Hyatt Hotel on Bay Street. Because that will add so much sewage to Bridgetown that it would be foolhardy to decide that you're going to proceed now without recognizing that you've got to do a study as to what the impact would be on it. No one is saying that it cannot go ahead as a project, but you've got to do it and do it the right way and a way that would not cause further grief or further pain to Barbadians.
In more estimates news, the MP for one of the areas worst affected by the South Coast sewage woes wants compensation from government for the residents. And if that money can't be found, then Christchurch West MP Dr. Maria Agard says tax rebates would be the ideal alternative. Speaking in the House of Assembly yesterday afternoon, she said people who live in places like Harts Gap and the immediate surrounding areas have been battling with the stench and other issues for several years. Dr. Agard, previously an independent MP who is now aligned with the United Progressive Party, says the residents have reached the limits of their frustration with what has now become a national crisis and public health concern, and they're beyond the point of accepting apologies.
I therefore call on the government to start a process of engagement with those affected to come to an agreement for compensation for their financial losses and personal sufferings. I know that we are going to be told that the government is cash-strapped. So I'm suggesting to you that if it is, you are unable to provide a settlement of some form of monetary compensation, the government must consider in whole or in part to reduce the taxation paid by the residences and the businesses of the affected area.
Opposition St. Andrew MP George Payne says he disagrees with Water Resources Minister Dr. David Estwick that a new sewage plan is needed to fix the crisis on the island's south coast. We apologize for the absence of that extract.
You don't need a new sewage plant. The problems are connected to the collection systems, and the leaks in the collection systems are what has been causing the problems. But because of the fact that he has been unable to get the correct personnel, and the fact that the engineers within the Barbados Water Authority, you can imagine the engineer, the former general manager of the acting general manager, and the former engineer who was responsible for sewage, for wastewater, the most experienced person in the Caribbean in this particular area, is not being utilized at all.
Meanwhile, the Barbados Water Authority is a step closer to starting repairs on the damaged sewage mains along the south coast. Today, the BWA updated the media on its 3 newly dug boreholes. Leanne Phillips has more.
The wells are located to the east of the South Coast Sewage Treatment Plant, and officials say they will be used while repairs are carried out to the damaged mains.
We have done 3 initial boreholes, 6 inches in diameter, and they've gone as far down as 300 feet, just to give us an idea of the geology of the area. What that will enable us to do now is to be able to establish at what depth we should do the actual injection of the wastewater. We're going to widen each of those boreholes using a 20-inch bit and install a casing, a 17-inch casing approximately. And that casing, we'll take it down to approximately 150 feet down. And what we will do then is to use that depth to begin to inject the wastewater.
From all indications, the work is progressing quicker than expected, and the first well should be completed by next week.
Once that is completed, the testing will start while we look at completing the others. And once the agencies, EPD and Health, are comfortable with the results, then we will start to do the diversion. So we anticipate that we should get to the repairs in a lot shorter period.
Further cleaning is also set to be carried out along the South Coast Sewage Network.
We know that as a result of the blockage that we have in Worthings, is slowing the velocity of the water, and obviously once you slow the water, you'll have grease and other things accumulating. So we're intensifying that program as well. So in a couple, probably another week or two, you will see additional crews out there flushing, taking out grease. We have been doing it mainly at night to avoid disruption to businesses and so forth. But we believe that we'll have to intensify that and do some in the daytime to accelerate that.
The wells are part of a plan which was revealed by the Water Resources Minister last Saturday. Rianne Phillips, Cbc News.
Thanks, Rianne. Well, a public education program will soon be rolled out for waste haulers visiting the Bridgetown sewage treatment plant. Acting General Manager Charles Leslie says this is necessary after a hauler dump matter which disrupted the system earlier this week. Those materials killed bacteria and caused a strong odor which forced nearby businesses and a nursery to close for 2 days.
And what we're hoping to do in the future is to re-educate some of these haulers so that the process does not happen, that mix-up doesn't happen again. We are hoping that by early next week for us to have that system back to normal. But it's a slow process because the bacteria now have to be regenerated again to get back the whole system running again.
Well, we take a pause here, but some potentially good news for both local milk farmers and milk lovers when the evening news returns. Welcome back. Consumers of fresh milk here in Barbados may soon be feeling an ease on their pockets. This after a long-anticipated cess on certain milk products is now steps closer to being implemented. Orlando Jones has more.
The long-awaited cess on certain milk products may be coming into effect soon. The tax was first announced back in 2015, and now the Cess on Milk Act 2018 is expected to be debated in Parliament next week. Consultant and former managing director at Banks Holdings Limited, Richard Cozier, is thrilled with the development. He says funds collected from the tax will be used to incentivize the dairy farmers to reduce their selling price to the Pine Hill Dairy, and the savings will be passed on to consumers.
Consumers who buy fresh or flavored milk, which has as a part of its ingredient raw milk from the farms in Barbados, will see a reduction in price. As to what level of reduction, that part of the bill we haven't seen yet, but when we do that, we'll crunch the numbers. But we expect it to be something that would be not dissimilar to the actual number of the tax.
Mr. Cozier was speaking at the Pine Hill Dairy Farmers Awards, now in its third year. There, dairy farms were awarded in various categories, focusing on the quality of milk production, and the Mecca Company Limited farm came out on top. President of the Barbados Beef and Dairy Producers Association, Annette Beckett, who is also attached to the Mecca Company, says she is glad to see progress on the act. She says it will help the industry grow.
As long as the price comes down, the idea is that they will buy more milk, and if the customers need more milk, then we will need more cows, and then we will be able to grow the industry. The actual machinations of the cess, which is what is the bill, that is being discussed now, and after that, as Mr. Cozier said, we will be able to get together with them and work out exactly how the percentage and that sort of thing affects farmers, but the farmers are happy.
The sentiment was shared by Chief Executive Officer of the Barbados Agricultural Society, James Paul.
There is, for instance, going to start to expand the production. There might even be new entrants to the industry outside of that, because what we are talking about the industry and creating market opportunities. The good thing about this is that farmers now, for the first time, being put in a position where they need not fear that the market will be there for the commodity.
Details of the act note that a 10% tax will be imposed on imported milk, condensed and flavored milk, and milk-based and milk substitute beverages imported into or produced in Barbados. Lorna Jones, CBC News.
Thanks, Lorna. Well, cowitch is posing a hazard for a Silver Hill, Christchurch community, and residents have had enough. They want the landowner and the authorities to intervene. We hear more in this Kishmar St. Geest report.
This bushy lot at Silver Hill Christchurch is posing several challenges for our residents. They say calls for relief from the cowitch, which is proven to be a nuisance, appear to have fallen on deaf ears. They reached out to the landowner and the relevant authorities, but to no avail. James Scotland says his children are being affected.
This is I would say a couple weeks now that it's affecting us, but I only realized it when I went looking for it and I bought up on it. But what's happening is that the house is full with it, the bed full with it. If you wash your clothes, it going into the clothes, and I gotta keep changing his clothes every couple of hours because it affecting him and he's scratching a lot of that. The other two children in the house, they're crying out that they can't sleep for the night because they're affecting them. I went to the ministry told me that the owner of the land will have to deal with it.
Neighbor Sheila Green is equally as worried.
It's just also affecting myself and my family, especially two nephews that I have. They are 3 years old. And when they get to them, they don't know the difference, so they'll be just jumping and hollering and scratching.
James's mother, Heather Scotland Jones, says the lot was cleaned in the past, but then left to run into its present state. She says rodents are another problem.
My concern is that the rats is coming out of there when the night comes. You're not safe because you got to be cleaning, mopping all the time because you have the little babies here. This is my granddaughter. The others are at school. There are 4 children living in this house at the time being. But on weekends, I have 7 grandsons be here. Right? So it is real disturbing to know now that the cowitch, now the place is loaded with cowitch, and you can't wash, you can't hang out clothes because the kids itching all the time.
In the meantime, the families are resorting to using powder to minimize the discomfort to these young children. Kishmar St. Geest, CBC News.
Thanks, Kishmar. Well, a local youth leader has offered a strong response to those who claim the current youth problems have always existed. In fact, founder of the Nature Fund Ranch, Corey Lane, is warning Barbadians that a lot of work has to be done sooner rather than later. He made the comments during the Rotary Club Barbados West Vocational Service Award ceremony after receiving an award for his service to the community. Mr. Lane believes the current youth crisis is unlike any it has ever seen before.
I am telling you, when I started this path some 20 years ago, the things that I am dealing with now, I was not dealing with 20 years ago. I was not leaving my bed at 3 o'clock in the morning to stop people from committing suicide in Cairns. I was not counseling multiple alcoholic teachers because they cannot handle the stress of young people. I was not dealing with 5, 6, 7-year-olds abusing and molesting each other. And that is the type of calls, and my wife can confirm to you, that I get all day, every day now.
And Mr. Lin is also pleading with Barbadians not to isolate themselves from the problems, but to accept them as their own.
And I like to use these times as rally calls for all of us to recommit our energy and our commitment to our society and bringing up that humanitarian in each and every one of us. Because if each one reaches one, we could definitely leave our mark in this world, in this society, making sure that we put our hands to the plow. Because one thing I know for sure, and that is that the harvest is many and the laborers are few.
A veteran educator has identified the change in social practices as the root cause for the violence among school children. That's the view of the principal of the Metropolitan High School, Olivier Cox. Oriane Phillips tells us more.
For the last 6 decades, 85-year-old Olivier Cox has been actively involved in education. And throughout that period, he's noticed a marked decline in social values.
Once upon a time, when I was going to school, and I came down the road kicking a tin or something, the next door neighbor could break down a pea tree and beat me. And I couldn't say anything when I get home. I pray that she don't, you see, or if they heard me using indecent language or anything. But nowadays, that is not so. How dare you touch my child? You know, if you got lashes at school, when you went back home and your parents heard about it, that's another set of lashes.
However, he says interventions at his school have been reaping results. Special emphasis is placed on spiritual development, respect, and academics.
What I have seen here, I have seen since we have morning prayers and evening prayers and you are talking to the children, I noticed that there have been a change. You know, I don't, and of course, maybe it is because everybody know everybody too, you know, and the emphasis is on the future. What are you going to do in a few 3 years from now? Where do you expect to be?
But it always hasn't been an easy journey, as the 61-year-old high school has faced several challenges. One of them is a fall-off in enrollment figures due to the expansion of the public school system. Currently, there are only 30 students.
One time we had over about 1,000 children. We were in 2 buildings. We used to rent from the Moravian, 3 buildings. We rented from the Moravian church over there. We were up there. We were also upstairs here. And then these are actually 2 buildings, see? Behind there. And then we had our computer room in the yard.
While he has no regrets about his history, he would like former students to give back to the aging institution.
I am disappointed sometimes when our pupils who have done well do not come back to visit us and to help us, you know. But I suppose Jesus says, blessed are the poor, for they shall inherit the earth.
The father of 10 has not decided to throw in the towel yet. At the moment, his 2 daughters help out with administrative tasks. One operates an adjacent nursery, while the other helps out with the canteen. Mr. Cox is hoping the school will not die, but return to its glory days. Rianne Phillips, CBC News.
Thanks so much, Rianne. Well, we take a break here, but still to come, a look at stories making headlines across the region. Welcome back. With Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, says the just concluded carnival ran relatively smoothly despite disturbances in some areas of the country. Over the weekend, Acting Commissioner of Police Stephen Williams confirmed that at least 8 people have been detained in relation to investigations into a threat to disrupt carnival.
There wouldn't be carnival without some element of bacchanal somewhere. We did have some instances of aggravation or disappointment. But in the end, Carnival 2018 has gone relatively smoothly, and from all reports, there is widespread satisfaction with the festival.
Dr. Rowley notes that as chairman of the National Security Council, there is still serious concern about the safety and security of the country.
We have had to monitor the activities of some of our citizens, a very small minority albeit, but we would be putting our heads in the sand if we do not acknowledge and accept that we as a people are part of the scourge of internationally unacceptable developments, more so in recent times, where some of our citizens have taken positions that are alien to us as a people and, of course, detrimental to the well-being of our nation.
Over in St. Lucia, one man and his children have taken up residence in a small boat after a fire completely gutted his home last year. We hear more in this report from HTS Television.
At first glance, it appears to be nothing out of the ordinary. However, a closer look at the pirogue docked near the vendor's arcade would tell a small piece of the story. The blue vessel, covered with similar colored tarpaulin, belongs to a 47-year-old father of 5. The man claims that in June 2017, While working in the banana fields of neighboring Martinique, he received a call indicating that his home, situated in a section of Castries Southeast, was destroyed by a raging fire. With nothing left to his name but his trusty pirogue, he claims he set off to try to make life as comfortable as possible for him and his children.
I came down, I saw the house burn, you understand me, and I and my children houseless. I have 5 kids, but right now 2 staying with me and the rest not staying with me. Understand? So that's where, right now I was staying on the other side. Everywhere I reach, I dock in and I sleep in with them. One going to the Bexar school and one there with me right now.
And have you sought assistance from?
Well, they gave me some letters and things to dispute, but the only person on them that helped me is the people that work in NIS. They give me a little voucher, $800 to buy some materials and different things. That's where I'm starting from now.
You mean the NCF?
NCF, yes.
Okay,
You've heard correctly. The father of 5 for the past 8 months has allegedly made St. Lucia's waters his home. Despite the ordeal, he is optimistic that things will get better, if not for him, but for the sake of his children.
It's been really rainy and windy for the past week or so. How have you guys been coping with that?
So I cope with it. I'm not getting wet. They have fun about it.
And how do you survive now? You
Well,
to fish?
yeah, well, I'm not fishing, but in the meantime, I survive with them. My daughter going to school, she don't have no problem. I come in, I doing everything for her, so that's not a problem.
So what's your hope now in terms of
Well, right now I just trying to see if I build in back. That's the only point, because right now that's where I have for now. That's where I'm doing.
Guyana is considering new options when it comes to pension payments. The announcement was made by Minister of Public Telecommunications, Catherine Hughes.
And the things we're looking at right now are automatically having funds going into their bank account if they so desire. We're also doing some research about maybe instituting a card that's almost like a debit card that their pension payments each month could directly go towards.
According to Minister Hughes, it is imperative that services being provided to pensioners not only be upgraded to ensure efficiency, but to also cater for their comfort and safety.
So we are working assiduously in that area. We are all aware of this incidences where we've had pensioners robbed. We know many pensioners probably were employed and probably had a bank account. And we want to encourage them to sign up at the post office to have their pension paid to a bank account. Later this month, I will be meeting with the Bankers Association in an attempt to share with them and to ask them to come on board, as we want to be able to provide new payment systems.
Minister Hughes added that plans are apace to implement less time-consuming measures for the benefit of pensioners and urged that they embrace the current payment systems that Guyana has to offer.
If I could urge people, more persons, to embrace mobile money, because that's one of the avenues we want to look at. As much as we can get away from walking around with huge amounts of cash.
A glimpse into the world of sports is just ahead with Anne-Marie Burke, but first, here's a tip from Cooperators General Insurance.
This tip of the day is brought to you by Cooperators General Insurance Company Limited. Insurance the way you want it to be.
Extreme confusion, inability to be awakened, vomiting, seizures, slow or irregular breathing, low body temperature, and bluish or pale skin are all signs of alcohol poisoning. If you think someone has alcohol poisoning, call an ambulance or get them to the hospital immediately. This tip is brought to you in association with the National Council on Substance Abuse, promoting drug awareness.